In March of 2019, a small film called Captain Marvel was released worldwide by Marvel Studios. Named by IMDb as the most anticipated film of the year, this movie was both the final installment before Avengers Endgame and the first female superhero movie produced in the MCU. The stakes were high, extremely high. The studio had marketed the film as a girl power movie, even going so far as to release it on International Women's Day. Never mind the fact that it had taken them over 10 years to even conceive a female superhero movie. It didn't matter that the women of the MCU had a highly disproportionate amount of screen time and frequently butchered storylines compared to the men. No, Marvel was finally righting their wrongs with an empowering movie that would inspire women everywhere, young and old, all across the world. Captain Marvel was poised to be a heroic and rousing film, but when it was released, disaster struck. The Rotten Tomatoes score dropped to 33% on the opening day due to a hemorrhage of misogynistic views, with Marvel fanboys crying about how they didn't want to see Carol Danvers fight on the big screen because she was a woman and not a man. Others shot back, calling out the trolls for their sexist views. Yes, Captain Marvel was a woman, a powerful one at that, and they were merely threatened by her individual strength. Those seemed to be the only two views of the movie for quite a while. Either you were a person who hated women, or you were a fiery feminist who loved Captain Marvel. Yet even after the male chauvinists laid down their arms, even after the woman-hating dust settled, even almost 2 years after its release, Captain Marvel still has not cemented its place as the triumphant feminist movie it claimed to be. Every non-sexist critique of this movie I've seen has pointed out the flatness in a film that claimed to empower women. In its quest to create a strong female lead, the movie managed to alienate viewers regardless of gender. So where exactly did Captain Marvel go so disastrously wrong?
I don't even know who you are.
You will.
Hi, my name is Alicia, and I'm a 15-year-old girl, which means you legally can't make fun of me for having opinions. And today, I'm going to be discussing girl power in terms of the modern female superhero. So what exactly is girl power?
I'm always picking up after you boys.
Quick disclaimer. I won't be talking about Black Widow because I want to wait for her solo film to release in May before I assess the situation and see whether the writers messed up her character or not. I would hate for this video to age really poorly, so no Natasha Romanoff discourse today. Girl power is a term that originated in 1991 after a punk band named Bikini Kill popularized the phrase. According to Wikipedia, girl power is a slogan that encourages and celebrates women's empowerment, independence, confidence, and strength. But why the need for the slogan in the first place? For centuries upon centuries, women have been degraded and demeaned. They have been connected to an inferior status in society, and it is pretty common knowledge the ways women have been and still are oppressed to this day. Women are deprived of education, independence, and jobs. They could not vote until 1920 in America, barely 100 years ago, and even later for the women of color in our society. And they still continue to face forces of backlash wherever they choose to pursue a career instead of settling down to make a family. The patriarchal nuclear family only served to drive this idea home. The husband was the sole breadwinner of the household, while the wife was relegated to the kitchen to merely do the cooking and cleaning. Women were subordinated to the harsh microscope of society. Women's bodies were used as a mockery and a way of appeasing men, being subjugated to extremely strict beauty standards.
Look at your hair. Look at that blouse. And the way that skirt hangs. And those socks. You don't seem to be exactly the type to make this guy behave like a human being.
Women had to be perfect China dolls, delicate, beautiful, ready to listen to any man's bidding. They must be damsels in distress, pretty but not smart, innocently pure, good at everything except for the areas men were, and purely desirable in every aspect.
Oh, brother. Oh, brother is right. Look at that hair, that skin, that mouth. And now look at that blouse. And now look at the skirt. And the socks.
If you were a female, you were an object for the taking. This brings us to the idea of hegemonic masculinity. A popular definition of the concept has been an idealized, dominant heterosexual masculinity constructed in relation to women and to subordinated masculinities and closely connected to the institution of marriage. Any man that aspires to embody this masculinity must display aggressive and violent behavior whilst restraining the flow of vulnerable emotions. He should also exhibit strength and toughness and be competitive and successful. Hegemonic masculinity promotes the idea of shutting off emotions in order to develop power, promoting traditional masculine values as the ideal of strength. If you exhibited these traits, you were at the top of the social pyramid. Hegemonic masculinity directly contributes to the idea of toxic masculinity that pervades our society. There is an either-or statement embedded in the idea of hegemonic masculinity. Either you are masculine and strong or feminine and weak. The dominant traits of the man are typically known as aggression, toughness, and callousness, while traits such as nurturance, sensitivity, sweetness, supportiveness, gentleness, warmth, passivity, cooperativeness, expressiveness, modesty, humility, empathy, affection, tenderness, and being emotional, kind, helpful, devoted, and understanding have been cited as stereotypically feminine. Feelings were associated with weakness, and through that, so were women. Because of their natural tendency for empathy and sensitivity, women were viewed as weaker. Their natural biology was twisted into a jab. Typical phrases such as, "you throw like a girl" and "you cry like a girl" were meant as insults. These generalizations only served to further the connotation of weakness and emotions, harming not only women but all people in the process. A study performed in 2018 illustrates how the men who actively pursued hegemonic masculinity led to struggles with mental health and feelings of shame and failure, ultimately never reaching out for help. Hegemonic masculinity hurts. The destigmatization of traditional feminine traits became increasingly important to benefit not only women but every single person in society. As women began to fight back against deep inequalities, they were slowly able to gain a foothold in the masses of society. Through this, they reclaimed their power. Being a woman was strong. Being a woman was having girl power. Womanhood was a force to be reckoned with, and being a woman was something to be proud of. It displayed the formidable energy that women had. They could be single or married, a housewife and employed, and still maintain independence. No shame remained with the connotation of female. They began to chip away from the sexism deeply entrenched in society, not only to find pride in themselves, but the traditional feminine traits as well. The worth of a woman was not determined by masculine terms. Girl power was essentially born as a way to regain strength and dignity in the position of being female. As second and third wave feminism swelled throughout the late 20th century and propelled girl power to the forefront of society, the appearance of the strong female lead began. The strong female lead is a broad term to describe a female character who is strong in some sort of capacity. She is the direct opposite of the archetype of the damsel in distress. In my mind, she is self-sufficient and has a good grasp of her flaws. She understands her weaknesses and strengths and how to improve herself. She feels firm in her womanhood, does not reject a part of herself to appear tough. As a child, the strong female characters I saw were down-to-earth and full of wit and wisdom. Irene Adler from Sherlock Holmes, Katniss Everdeen in The Hunger Games, every woman in Little Women. These were characters who I could see a piece of myself in. The strong female lead could be me, and I could be her. But sadly, the term has been so overused through the years that it casts a broad net over any sort of female who appears tough and typically more masculine. As the term becomes more and more popularized, the definition becomes looser and looser. A term that used to define a complex, realistic woman who was strong mentally, emotionally, or physically, or all three, became a term to simply tack onto any sort of brute female lead. It morphed into a one-dimensional character type, a person who was firstly a woman, with the strong character part as an afterthought. The slow evolution of girl power into girl power with a capital G has made a mockery out of the idea. Media has become like the fourth season of a TV show, cutting its characters down to a single characteristic: male strength. In their bid to create compelling women, they have forgotten to create compelling characters. This, coupled with a surface-level grasp of femme representation in media, created an ultimately harmful way to display women. They were placed in films purely to hit a quota of representation. Moments of girl power were contrived and forced, with a message almost blasted in your face. This is feminine strength, they said. Woman in a vague semblance of a group with little to no connection is girl power. Woman with no characteristics other than being emotionless fighting robots is girl power. Women who have to conquer no real emotional roadblocks or failures is girl power. In the desperate avoidance of one stereotype, we have created another. We have reverted to the ways of women simply being a prop. Writers reject any complexity in their female characters and revert to the easy path of one-dimensionality. If the girl on screen can now kick bad guys' teeth in, there obviously is no need for an accurate portrayal of flaws or depth. If women can fight, that's girl power, right? There are two broad categories of girl power movies. One, the category of movies with more superhero-like strong females, movies such as Captain Marvel and Wonder Woman. The second category is the pool of movies with everyday characters, such as Legally Blonde and Hidden Figures. I find the everyday strong females to be more stable in their emotional depth, as well as their depictions of feminine characteristics and flaws. That is not to say the second group of movies is perfect in its depiction of female strength and failure, but more often than not, there's a wider opportunity for complexity. In the girl power superhero movies, the scale swings more widely. The trope of the female superhero is uniquely afflicted with the fact that the character is already powerful in a physical sense. In Wonder Woman, Diana is a goddess. In Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers can turn into a flying beam of light. Wanda Maximoff can alter reality with nothing more than just her mind, and Black Widow is a highly trained Russian assassin. In a sense, they are already incomprehensible. No real person can soar through space at 100 miles an hour and kill men by simply looking at them. Additionally, when a woman is equipped with a superpower, there seems to be a fine print to that trait. Power is associated with the masculine, and subsequently, a woman superhero will either be rough and callous or completely devoid of weaknesses, most likely a combination of the two. Essentially, they are a male superhero dressed in a woman's body to appeal to the mass cries for strong female leads. In an article written by Britt Marling for the New York Times, she describes the downfall of the feminine in movies, a slow annihilation of the feminine as a force wherever it resides, in women and men of the natural world. Because what we really mean when we say we want strong female leads is, give me a man, but in the body of a woman I still want to see naked. Stereotypically feminine traits have been rejected for so long, and the modern strong female lead only serves to reinforce those terms in a new and exciting way. The precarious development of the female superhero comes down to their defects and the depth of their disposition. Only through a strong characterization of humanity can a compelling character be created. Writer's Digest, Readsy, Masterclass, almost every single writing website tells you to write a character with flaws. That way, no matter how powerful or ethereal a character is, there is always an element of humanity balancing them with us, the ordinary viewers. The suspension of disbelief in superhero movies is obviously required, but something must ultimately connect us to the character. A Rotten Tomato article discusses how, when our cultural scripts equate strength with brawn, we ignore the important ways emotional intelligence and empathy play a role in how we interact with each other, and it's important to ascribe women's emotions into our history. The female superhero is forced to walk the fine line of physical versus emotional strength, and more often than not, the side of physical overpowers the side of emotional. But some movies can do it right.
What do these women wear into battle?
They don't,
Oh, baby.
Wonder Woman was DC's first female-led superhero film, and by girl power terms, it was an absolute triumph. We watched Diana, an Amazonian warrior who has trained on Themyscira, an island full of women, for all her life, suddenly thrust into the melee of World War I. As she goes on her mission to defeat Ares, the god of war, and stop the fighting, she is exposed to the detriment of the outside world, as well as love and loss. This movie creates a wonderfully fleshed out character arc for Diana. She grapples with herself throughout this entire movie. For her whole life, she has lived with a defined moral compass to do what is just and what is right. But when she comes into the real world, she becomes aware of the sinful, painful nature of society, forcing her to reevaluate what she believed about humankind. When she kills who she suspects to be Ares and the war does not end, she is confronted with the realization that all of humankind is corrupt.
Look at this world. Mankind did this, not me. They are ugly, filled with hatred, weak.
Her judgment temporarily wavers, and at this moment, we can see how her naivety has negatively affected her. She had believed humans were good and right for so long that this revelation nearly brings her to her knees. We see Diana's more womanly traits characterize her in a unique way as well. She runs alone across no man's land and liberates a small village because she knows it is the right thing to do. She ultimately defeats the villain through the power of empathy and the fact that she believes only love can truly save the world. Diana falls in love with a pilot named Steve Trevor, and his death allows her to feel true grief and almost lose herself. This emotion propels her to finally defeat Ares as her love triumphs over her grief and allows her to see the good in man. But Diana also has flaws that endear her to us. Her naivety enables her to learn and grow through her experiences with war and slowly evolve into a fiercer warrior. She is also deeply stubborn in her ways. She is unwavering in her decision to leave Themyscira. She firmly believes she must conquer Ares herself. She insists on facing the incredibly harrowing path across no man's land, and she is convinced that killing Ares will end the war. But the headstrong warrior stumbles in her pace. Her stubbornness often propels her forward before she can properly assess and understand the situation in its entirety, and it is this way that Diana is weakened during her final battle. Her flaws simultaneously handicap her as a character and allow her to grow, producing a beautiful three-dimensional character. Watching Diana dodge bullets and sprint across trenches felt powerful in its own right, but knowing that she was a realistic woman made it stronger all the more. Diana can be analyzed in both her powers and her actual character, exhibiting the intricacies of her persona. Her character is the perfect portrayal of a strong female lead, one that wrestles with moral conflicts, makes mistakes, and faces failures. She does not reject her feelings, but lets them guide her way. Director Patty Jenkins also recognizes this, asking, "If women have to always be hard, tough, and troubled to be strong, and we aren't afraid to be multidimensional or celebrate an icon of woman everywhere because she is attractive and loving, then we haven't come very far, have we?" Diana is a character that successfully combines emotion and strength to illustrate how a good female superhero is created in film. On the other hand, I cannot properly comment on Captain Marvel without taking a moment to discuss the volumes of pure misogyny directed at this movie and Brie Larson herself. Many die-hard fanboys discredit this movie simply because it is a female-led superhero movie and project that misogyny onto Larson as well. Stop hating the woman. She's an incredible actress. She's won an Oscar, for God's sake. I don't blame Brie Larson for this portrayal at all. I think she was just given poor material and did the best she could. Now, Captain Marvel is a film about Veers, a pilot with severe amnesia and incredible powers. She wears a chip in her neck to suppress her emotions as she is taught feelings weaken her power. Veers has only known life on an alien planet with the Kree, who are fighting a battle with an opposing race called the Skrulls, a group of shape-shifting aliens. When a mission gone wrong lands Veers on Earth, she meets with S.H.I.E.L.D. operatives to get her back to space and her mentor, Yon-Rogg. As she journeys through California to return to her planet, she slowly begins to remember her past. It turns out, Veers was an Air Force pilot named Carol Danvers working with a scientist to study a mystical gem called the Tesseract, or the Time Stone. When she was flying a plane during a secret mission, it was shot down by the Kree and she absorbed the power of the Tesseract. She was then kidnapped and taken by the Kree in order to contain her power. She realizes that she has been fighting for the wrong side this entire time. The Kree are invaders who want to recapture the Tesseract to banish the Skrulls forever, and the chip in her neck is actually inhibiting her strength. Danvers removes the chip in an awe-inspiring moment and blasts the Kree away, moving the Skrulls to a new home and vowing to protect the universe wherever she's needed. Interestingly, Captain Marvel was very similar to Wonder Woman in numerous ways. They were both female-led solo movies with a story about a woman with a hard-set moral compass and a sense of stubbornness. Both of their final endings were compelled by a release of emotion, and both women were extremely powerful and almost indestructible. But where Wonder Woman succeeded in telling a compelling, heartfelt story, Captain Marvel fell flat. For a woman that championed the idea of girl power so strongly, with oddly edited montage and fight scenes with "I'm just a girl" playing in the background, Captain Marvel felt like she existed solely for the purpose of being a woman. Yet even in that aspect, she manages to fail. Danvers faces moments of blatant sexism in the film. A man asks her to smile, she is constantly bullied as a female Air Force pilot, her childhood was vaguely abusive, and her father had taught her that she was a weakling. She is knocked over time and time again, figuratively and literally. In a montage after she removes her chip, we can see her get up despite the pain, from a child all the way to an adult. But without a compelling reason as to why we get this moment, with weakly linked attempts at showing a girl brushing off the sexism, the scene does not evoke any sort of emotion except for skepticism. Just Joho for Mashable writes, "The difference lies in how Captain Marvel presents femininity as a gender-specific weakness to overcome and grow from, versus Wonder Woman's world where feminine traits are a universal necessity for the survival of all humankind." Now, I don't claim to dislike the movie as part of the MCU or Captain Marvel as a superhero. I just dislike the writing on this movie and the surface-level character development demonstrated in the film. Yes, it is supposed to be a stepping stone towards the huge events in Endgame, but that isn't an excuse for the terrible character writing. Captain Marvel was a tough tomboy who railed against the societal norms of sexism, but the movie treated the idea of actual blemishes as taboo, slipping back into the familiar pattern of extremes. Of course, Carol Danvers couldn't have character flaws because imperfections automatically equated to weakness, and she needed to be a strong female character. She maneuvers her way through obstacles of understanding, but nothing is ever truly wrong with her. This is her character arc's fatal flaw. Without a single mistake or failure, the last remaining shred of relatability disappears. The very thing that tethers a character to us, emotional complexity, is lost. Without depth, there is no way we can care about Captain Marvel's heroic struggles because she is an all-powerful, perfect being. The only thing separating her from being a literal god is her mortality, and even then the only scratches she sustains are nosebleeds and flesh wounds. We don't care that Carol gets up again and again. We know she's about 10 times as powerful as anyone opposing her, because she has no imperfections. She is never overcoming herself. Her stubbornness always leads to a productive outcome, and her moral compass needs no convincing as to what the truth about her past is. When she tells her mentor, a man, that she has nothing to prove to him, she also has nothing to prove to us. You knew she was going to end up on top no matter what. Yes, most superhero movies are supposed to end victoriously with the hero triumphantly saving the day, but even in extreme fight scenes where it was supposed to be life or death, there was no smidge of worry in me. If Carol was in a pinch, she could just blast her way out. You knew she was more powerful than anyone in the story. You knew she didn't have a singular flaw hindering her growth. All she had was a chip in her neck to hide her feelings, a chip that could easily be snapped off at any moment. The fact that Captain Marvel could not feel emotions clearly served as a symbol for the way society shames women for feeling, but it didn't hit home. The fact that she had no emotions was not a flaw, it was a physical factor caused by something external. The ultimately botched metaphor broadcasts an oversimplified moral. All you must do to unlock your inner strength is flip a switch. It's as easy as that. The overarching message of hiding your emotions only makes you weak would have worked as a compelling story if it was a mental roadblock instead of a physical one. Instead, by imbuing it into a physical device, The lesson is quickly revealed, making you wonder why that chip didn't fall off sooner. In a review for The New Yorker, Richard Brody describes how the only feelings that Carol is allowed to have in the course of the film are constructive ones and productive ones. Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel, despite their similarities, produce two entirely different outcomes. A character born as a human is less tangible and less relatable than an actual goddess. Where Wonder Woman builds stumbling blocks for Diana to work through, Captain Marvel sets up small speed bumps for Carol to cruise over. Where Diana is propelled by a pang of empathy and feeling to defeat the ultimate villain, Carol acts overtly tough and indifferent long after she is able to fully experience emotion. Diana engages in physical and mental battle, while Carol simply flicks a finger to escape any predicament she finds herself in. Diana is complicated and compelling, while Carol is distant and dull. These two female superheroes took completely different approaches to their journey's climax, and unsurprisingly, the road less traveled worked much better. But perhaps I am being unfair. After all, Captain Marvel is a part of the MCU, while Wonder Woman is a member of the DCEU. Two different universes, perhaps too different to compare. So, let's examine another female superhero, Scarlet Witch, alternatively known as Wanda Maximoff.
Sam?
In the MCU, Wanda is first seen as a Sokovian orphan living with her twin brother Pietro in a laboratory. Her parents are dead and her hometown has been blasted to dust. She has been experimented on by scientists and consequently can manipulate reality through her mind. In Avengers Age of Ultron, she starts off fighting for the side of evil, but she becomes a part of the Avengers after realizing she has been fighting for the wrong team. She helps the Avengers through multiple battles, but ultimately, her lack of control over her powers leads her to become a fugitive after causing too much harm. She falls in love with another superhero named Vision, and they run away together in order to make their relationship work. In Avengers Infinity War, her love for Vision forces her to use her powers to kill him in order to stop the main villain Thanos. Yet Thanos turns back time and kills Vision again while Wanda stands by, helpless. Her story is one filled with grief and trauma.
I want to help you.
How? What could you possibly have to offer me?
Therapy? Wanda and Captain Marvel, again, are similar in identity. Both are powered by one of the Infinity Stones, Wanda from the Mind Stone and Carol from the Time Stone, and they both are faced with extreme obstacles from the universe. Both are faced with tremendous amounts of trauma from their childhood, and both are compelled by emotion in their powers. But once again, where Captain Marvel collapses, Wanda soars. Wanda is dealt trials in a never-ending cycle. She feels her twin brother, her only remaining family member, get shot to death. Her loose grip on her powers causes her to kill innocent civilians. She watches Vision die twice. She must wrestle with herself and the powers she never asked for, how much damage they can do, and how she's willing to use them. Wanda's emotions drive her powers and actions. When she's angry and sad, her powers increase, and she is often horrified by the damage she does to helpless citizens. She is not as openly expressive as Wonder Woman, but her actions display a similar sense of empathy and sensitivity. Captain Marvel, on the other hand, does not experience nearly any of that. Her abusive childhood and extreme victimization by a manipulative group of aliens is merely brushed aside as an inconvenience. Captain Marvel is always sure of herself, sure in her actions, sure in her powers, sure in every move she makes. When confronted with her long-lost friend from the Air Force, she displays almost no signs of emotions. She is tough to a fault, and her complexity as a character is nowhere to be found. Somehow, a character with no solo movie and 2 times less screen time in the MCU than Captain Marvel manages to convey a level of complexity miles above any man-hating scenes in Captain Marvel. Now, with the development of Wanda in her own TV series on Disney+, I have hope that Captain Marvel 2 will serve as a way to round out Carol as a superhero who is emotionally strong as well as just physically. Perhaps she will finally be a superhero that connects back to us, as a realistic character and as a woman. I don't think I can truly conclude a discussion on female superheroes without mentioning the most egregious, contrived moment of girl power in a superhero movie I have ever seen. Specifically, Avengers Endgame. Now, I think you know the moment I'm talking about. The moment in the theater where I wanted to curl up in a ball and cry, and not from the overwhelming joy that all my favorite superheroes were back on screen. It was a scene that felt as if the directors and writers had blended the tatters of Captain Marvel's failed feminism into a singular moment, as if they were apologizing for that movie by doing the exact same thing all over again, but somehow much worse. But in case you don't remember this terrible moment, let me refresh your memory.
I don't know how you're gonna get it through all that.
Don't worry.
She's got help.
Hey Siri, define pandering. During the final ultimate battle of the movie, every single female character in the MCU manages to land in one spot and hear one character say one rousing line. This blasé show of half-hearted, unmotivated empowerment made me physically shrink in my seat. Probably not the reaction the filmmakers were going for. This scene makes absolutely no sense. In a 15-acre spot of land, every woman somehow miraculously managed to come to one spot. They can't all logically make it there in 10 seconds. Half of them are on foot and were just revived from the dead. Maybe they were magically linked by the uterus or something. Additionally, the first female Avenger, Black Widow, is very clearly missing. As you watch this glorious moment, her absence is only made more apparent. It feels like a slap to the face that one of the founding Avengers, the only female on the original team, is gone. A slightly melodramatic tone creeps back into your mind as you remember she died 40 minutes ago, the definition of salt in the wound. This scene also demeans the ability of Captain Marvel herself. She quite literally blasted through a 500-foot spaceship 2 minutes before this. Why would she, a flying, magic stone-powered superhero, need the help of a girl who can throw knives pretty well? Only 3 of those women can actually fly, and 2 of them are aided by something else. This scene does not build any character in any possible way. Nothing about this moment actually works or aids the plot, so why leave it in? Well, I think we all know the answer. It's called catering to an audience. This moment in the movie was as if the directors had set up a megaphone in the auditorium to convey their message, a blindingly obvious moment with girl power scrawled across the screen. It's even in the script. Of course, it's the women of Marvel in a herd sprinting across the battlefield in a pallid display with no more value than a hashtag under an Instagram post. They couldn't have made it more clear if they spray painted the message on a baseball bat and proceeded to beat us over the head with it. The writers and directors rejected all sense of feasible logic in order to inspire an insipid attempt of feminine strength. If all the strong women from the MCU gathered together in a group, that's girl power times 1,000. It has to be inspiring. Girls from all over will love this. Many other filmgoers held the same opinion as me. On Quora, a woman argues that the scene showed the female heroes' respective great moments, but not its consequences in the overall battle. Another commentator noted that it defied the internal logic of the movie, obviously placed in for pandering. One viewer hit the nail squarely on the head. I don't need these male writers to reassure me that women can be as interesting and powerful as men, and then circle it in yellow highlighter. I've known that my entire life. All in all, this scene is relegated to the position of a Christmas tree ornament. Sure, it looks nice, but it's really only there for decoration. Fake sentimentality 1, spectators' viewing enjoyment 0. One YouTube comment sums it up perfectly. Being a female superhero isn't about I'm always perfect all the time. It's about being a well-written character. The message must be made clear. There's no need for boxed-in values of masculinity and femininity at all. Empathy, assertiveness, kindness, and toughness have not, are not, and will never be mutually exclusive. A strong female lead should not have to push the fact that they are strong and female into your face. Her actions and words should broadcast that message. Female superheroes in movies must not exist in a scene simply to be a woman. Their purpose must mean more than that. Even objectively, a good character must be written well. True girl power moments must remember that women are just as complex as men, and bunching them together will not create a moment for women to cheer for. It is necessary to truncate the time spent trying to count women in an empowerment register and instead focus on developing characters who are emotionally complex and strong, and additionally, just so happen to be women.